Maurice Mason has beaten his ex-girlfriend, Jennifer Hitchcock, to near death for daring to try and leave him. Now, accompanied by his #1 fan, impressionable nephew Benny Fryer, they're again driving the 500 miles from Lincoln, Nebraska to Wisconsin to keep Jennifer away from her family. Mason knows they'd call the police if they saw the beating she's endured. But they're running low on money.
Mason comes up with a plan to kidnap a guy that he had met at a halfway house after he'd gotten out of prison.
Jennifer is forced back into the trunk.
They know that they can't let Klein see Jen in the condition she's in. They're afraid he's going to get spooked, so they duct tape her and throw her in the trunk of the car.
"45-year-old David Klein lives in Mauston, Wisconsin, and is lured away from his home by the promise of drugs.
Klein's just a regular guy.
They arrive at a nearby barn.
And Klein starts to ask, what are we doing out here?
Why are we going here?
You got some wild-grown weed inside here.
And Mason tells him, well, there's some wild-growth marijuana out here, and that's what we're out here for.
Take the money, guys. Just take the money. Just take the money. You can have it.
Mason takes the opportunity to demonstrate to Jennifer that she's gotten off lightly so far, as he's capable of inflicting far worse pain and suffering.
When Mason brings Jennifer into the shed, he's giving her another object lesson.
You see this? You see this? I did this.
That is, that if you do not comply, you too can die a very slow and painful death.
They tell Klein they'll call and let someone know where he is so he can be rescued, but they never do. That afternoon, with a new plan to become bank robbers, they drive to a nearby store where Fryer buys a 12-gauge shotgun, ammunition, and a hacksaw. That night, June Klein returns home, and there's no sign of her husband.
I could hear the television going, and I walked into the house and he wasn't sitting in the chair. Well, that wasn't unusual for him. I thought maybe he'd gone over to see one of his friends that was within walking distance.
There's no cause for concern until June makes a disturbing discovery.
I noticed his tablets for epilepsy were sitting there. They weren't with him. And that's when I started to get a little bit worried.
She calls the Juneau County Sheriff's Office to report her husband missing. A neighbor tells officers she saw him that morning with two strangers.
She saw a red vehicle in the driveway of the Klein residence. Actually saw Dave Klein talking to two male subjects. The vehicle had Nebraska plates on it.
Meanwhile, Mason, Fryer, and Jennifer arrive at a motel in Baraboo, 30 miles from where they tied up David Klein.
Who are we doing next?
Not sure yet.
There, they saw down the barrel of their new shotgun to make it easier to conceal and come up with new ideas for stealing far more money. The next day, they drive out into the country, find an isolated spot, and test the gun. The duo then head to a public hunting ground to hang out, fantasizing about future robberies.
Now be a good girl. You know what happens if you don't. Give me a kiss. Give me a kiss. Give me a kiss. You know what, Benny? I really love that girl.
I know.
But she knows too much about what we've done, knows too much about us, knows too much about me. Shut up, Jennifer!
Jennifer's trapped in her own car, which by now is also trapped in the soft ground. There's only one thing left to do.
And so they're forced to go on foot. They walk for a little ways and they come up on a bar.
At 9:30, Benny Fryer walks inside.
Said he had car trouble and he wanted to use the telephone.
Using a fictitious name, Fryer calls a taxi, which picks up all three of them outside the bar. The driver, John Romberg, thinks it's just a run-of-the-mill ride.
Romberg has no idea who he's dealing with.
A short time later, they arrive 15 miles away, back in Baraboo, where they sawed off the barrel of the shotgun. Maurice Mason has no money to pay the fare and decides the time has come to prove how bad he can be.
I don't have any money.
Well, if you can't get it, the cops can.
Didn't even ask for money. Shot him in cold blood.
50-year-old John Romberg dies instantly. A man with a reputation for kindness who was only too willing to help others.
Mason's murder of Romberg shows how psychopathic he is, and it's just another indication of how unconcerned he is about whether people live or die.
The trio head just a block away to a house occupied by Fryer's brother, sister-in-law, and another woman. Right away, they notice Jennifer is upset and has clearly been assaulted.
And Mason even admitted that he'd beaten her during an argument. They know Mason was a very violent man.
I can't do this anymore. I need to get away from him. He's crazy. I don't even know what to
What are you guys talking about?
Nothing.
Nothing? Come here, we talk to you. Come on.
Baraboo police receive a report of a suspicious car that appears to have been abandoned.
I arrived on the scene here. You could see where the taxi driver was dead with a gunshot wound to the head.
Investigators soon see that his killer had not been after money.
When we saw the money bag between the two seats, we knew that it wasn't a robbery. The next thing we thought of was a personal vendetta against him. Was there somebody that was upset with him?
Police canvass the neighborhood for clues, but come up empty.
Most everybody we talked to said they hadn't heard anything or seen anything. Because of the time of night it was, most people were getting ready for bed or already in bed.
He speaks to the dispatcher.
I was told that the driver had gone to Poor Nate's in Lake Delton to pick up one person. She was then notified that there was 3 people that had gotten into the vehicle.
Police arrive at the bar and talk to the owner.
He asked if I could describe the guy, and I said, yeah, I certainly could. He had a distinct look, you know, that I could recognize him anywhere.
We at least knew that we had a starting point.
The following morning, Mason, Fryer, and their captive are on the move again, heading off into the woods while Mason tries to figure out their next move.
They start walking up this hill with Jen, and they come to conclude very quickly that the gig is about up. They've murdered a cab driver. They've left a man they know tied up. So they're coming to terms with the fact that they're on the verge of being arrested.
Maurice Mason's violent and murderous rampage is drawing to an end, but there's still time for someone else to die. Get more Wicked Attraction online.